Oh, there's the announcement. Recording the meeting. Hey, Nick, how you doing?
I'm good. Hey, John. Hey, everyone. Maria, Steve, Laurel.
Congratulations on being elected to the select board.
Oh, thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. I don't know if that's congratulations or condolences, but so far it's been good.
In what town?
I live in Corinth, sort of northern
In what
Orange
town?
County,
Okay.
right next to Bradford. Let me give myself a real name here. Is it as hot and sticky in everybody else's corner of the world as it is here today?
Yes.
Yeah. The confession I make is that we've got a window AC in our house. And we haven't put the AC in the office. So like that's my excuse for working from home today.
Yeah, I tried to escape to the basement for a bit, and it's sort of a battle of air quality versus air temperature down there. Fighting the spiders. Right.
Nice to see everyone. You know, we always start a couple minutes after 10 just because it takes people a minute or two to come on in. So welcome. Our session today is about hosting community events or events that build community. We're pretty excited. This feels timely and like a good topic to touch on. So we're looking forward to it. We're going to hear about some great community-based events, and then hopefully the idea with all these workshops is that I suspect you all have events of your own that you can share as well, and so look forward to hearing from participants as we after we listen to our presenters.
Looks like we've still got a steady trickle coming into the waiting room, but I'll defer to you, John, in terms of whenever we want to get started here.
Yeah, I'm thinking one more minute maybe. So yesterday was a 2-swim day for me.
Yeah,
it's that kind of weather.
Today's already been 1.5 for me, so halfway there to 3. We'll see by the end.
I have to say, it's a time where I live in Montpelier, and like the accessibility of some cool, fresh water to take a dunk in is such a component of quality of life on days like this, you know, that there is nothing like that. Like last night, a buddy and we went over to the Dog River right here in town, you know, a mile from downtown Montpelier, and you just lay in that river for like 45 minutes, and just like that cool water just brings the temperature down. It's really something else.
We went to the North Branch swimming hole last night, and there's like a nice little spot around one of the oxbows. We were just standing, and you get the little fish that come and give you a free pedicure, which some people pay good money for that in malls, you know. It was nice.
Yeah, the nibbles.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, some people enjoy it and others not so much.
Not so much, right.
So, all right, I think we can go ahead and get started. You know, I'm John Copans. I work at the Council on Rural Development. Among other things I do here, I help lead up this thing we call the Vermont Community Leadership Network. And to describe the idea around the network, it is that we live in a place here in Vermont where people are always striving in many different ways to make their communities better. And it's sort of this entrepreneurial spirit of like, what can I do for my town and for my neighbors? And so our sense at the Council on Rural Development is that there's real power in bringing those of us who do that work at the community scale, in bringing us together on occasion to sort of share notes and learn from each other. You know, and that's across category. We, you know, some of us maybe are focused on a particular area. Maybe we lead up an energy committee, or maybe we chair the planning commission, or maybe we head up a local nonprofit, or we're a business owner. But our sense is that there's a lot that we can gain from gathering together and thinking together about how we do this work and how we can do it better. You know, and with the big picture of that being that what we know is all of that work that happens locally adds up to a better state ultimately. So much of the work we have to do starts at this neighborhood and community scale, and that in fact, if we're going to make progress as a state of Vermont, we really have to think about those local efforts, because that's where we can have the greatest impact. So today we're talking about hosting community events, and I think when I think about community events, I think I don't think it necessarily fits into these two categories, but one way that I think about it is some events are a little more focused on those who sort of live and building community for the residents of a community. And honestly, some events are really, I think, focused on attracting visitors and making for an event that draws people to the community. But honestly, I think there's a lot of events that do both, right? You go to the 3rd of July parade in Montpelier and you have this fabulous commingling. You see everybody from town on the sidelines of that parade, or often in the parade, and then you know that everybody who's visiting Montpelier for the 4th of July weekend is also there, and it can serve both of those. But for today, we really, I think, are thinking a lot about the how we're thinking about that is because we are, I think this goes without saying, but there are trends both nationally in Vermont that are sort of pushing people away from one another. We're spending a lot of time in the digital space, I say ironically, as we look at each other on these in these little screens, but also we're spending more time with our own. Hey, Nick, I think you're, Nick, are you recording? Are you?
I'm having some connectivity issues. Yeah, sorry, I just got booted. It looks like it's recording maybe to the cloud, so we should be good.
Okay, got it. So I guess one thing we think about at the Council on Rural Development is where are those spaces where people are gathering together across sort of politics, across class. And I think when we think about the events, when we hear from our presenters today, that's one lens to think of it through, is like where, I mean, I'll give you an example. On Friday night, I took my family to the Montpelier Mountaineers game down on Elm Street. And you're sitting in those stands and you see the full cross section of Montpelier in those stands watching that baseball game. You see these packs of kids who have this autonomy to run around, like they're coming up to their parents, they're getting a few bucks, they're going. I mean, my kids are too shy to go into a store downtown and buy something, but they're going to those vendors, they're buying popcorn, and it's just sort of this safe space. And you get a sense that a whole mix of Montpelier is there. And I think as we think about what we cherish in Vermont in terms of communities with cohesion, where we do connect with one another, our sense is that events and spaces where that happens is really important and something that's worth investing in. Like, it takes work, it takes energy, and it feels like, frankly, if anything, we need to redouble our efforts in this work of creating both physical spaces and events where people come together in a sort of unifying way, not around politics mostly, but just around being together, having fun, seeing one another, enjoying good food, good arts, good company. And so with that, I'm going to introduce our first presenter today. And Emily Maclure Maclure is the proprietor of the Craftsbury General Store and also the organizer of the block party, the annual block party in Craftsbury. And we've invited Emily to talk about the block party. But I have to say, like, the general store is another example of this. It's a place that everybody in Craftsbury goes and feels comfortable and sees one another. Part of the reason people go into that general store is, yeah, they want their cup of coffee, yeah, they want their bag of chips or whatever it is, but they also know they're going to run into their neighbors and have conversations. And that's part of the draw. And Emily provides that space for the community of Craftsbury that's so important. So with that, Emily, I'll turn it over to you to tell us about the block party.
Thanks so much, John, and nice to meet you. Nice to meet you as well, Nick, although virtually. I'm such a big fan of VCRD and the work that you guys are all doing. And yeah, Paul Costello, I've had the great honor of being on the CAE board with him for several years and just really got to know him in the last 7 or so years. And yeah, he is a force, and honored to take part in this with you guys today. Thanks for asking me. Yeah, I feel I probably am a little, you know, the block party for us started as the first year it was an anniversary for the store having opened. So we just were doing a normal, you know, we usually do these Wednesday night dinners that we started in the first year. And that week we said, let's just do a free barbecue for all of our neighbors and friends and have them come down. And, you know, 250 people showed up. And so then the next year it was like, you know, maybe let's see, there's 2 stores in town. So I called Christy and I said, do you want to do a block party? And so we, you know, were able to enlist the select board and the town government, which, I mean, I really think that's such a huge piece. We have a community around supporting community events. You know, they really, yeah, they let us run with it. And so we block off part of the street in the downtown village of Craftsbury. And that first year, I think we had 750 people, and it was a free barbecue. And then it was the two stores, and we each serve as community spaces. There's a lot of crossover and folks, but there's also folks that just go to one or the other store because that's where they feel the most comfortable. And so having an event that said, this is like being co-hosted by these 2 stores that don't look at each other as, you know, we just don't compete with each other. We work really well together. They do a Friday night dinner. We do a Wednesday night dinner. They have creamies. We don't, you know, like we just respect that kind of energy. And so that's, I feel like what we tried to bring to this block party. And so I think I don't know how many we've had now, because we're not doing this year. And, you know, they do take a fair amount of planning, and we didn't know where the status was going to be in terms of the state's mandates. So we did obviously miss last year and this year, but I think we've done 7. And we bring in a great band and we have fireworks, and I think the last time we did it, it was 1,250 people showed up, and it was just awesome. No one was expected to do anything. They could just show up and eat a meal with their neighbor and dance to some great music. And there was kids activities, and you know, people were really excited to volunteer. People had to like stay at road closings and dish out food for neighbors. And we used a lot of like tools. Volunteer sign up, I think, was one that we used. But it ended up being something that I don't think we knew what we were creating when we did it. And it has really, I'm kind of bummed we're not doing it this year, because like you're saying, I think this is the moment when yeah, we've just been so alienated from our neighbors. And you know, I'm watching some things happen now, like T-ball just started in Craftsbury, and it hadn't been there for years, and there's 60 kids enlisted, and it was, you know, watching neighbors talk with their other neighbor, you know, that probably don't naturally hang out together, but their kids are playing in the same game, and those spaces are like just incredibly important for us to create. Yeah, that's my start, and then you guys can kind of help lead that, I guess, where you want me to go with that, John. But
That's great. I guess one quick question, and then we'll have a little more of a dialogue after everyone presents. But like, is it a team? Like, how have you built the team to organize that? Like, what does that look like to sort of build that organizing team?
so the food is all free. So Christy, the 2 stores, you know, kind of reach out to a lot of our vendors and, you know, basically ask for help in terms of, can you donate some meat? Can you donate some beverages? Can you, you know, so we really use those relationships, leverage those relationships to bring product in. And then there's, you know, Pete's Greens that donates all the potatoes when we make the potato salad, and they donate a bunch of greens, and it became something that everybody wanted to be involved in. So the outdoor center does a big salad, and the Sea Village store does a big salad, and Sterling College brings the dessert. And it's just like, now every year we all know we're doing it, and it's not a huge lift because we're doing it together and collaboratively. And you know, the setup is awesome. It's like the day, you know, Joey and Christy, who own the other store, come down with their big trailer, and they like scoop me up, and we run over and we load all the chairs, and you know, you know, we have a great team at our store as well. And so it's just the 2 teams of store employees that really help pull the whole thing together. And yeah,
That's great. Thanks, Emily. I want to come, I have to say.
yeah. There's a couple other just call outs of events that I'm seeing that I'm just finding really fascinating. Actually, one is on here. Carrie launched like an online gathering space for folks this winter that was like, how can we think outside the box? How can we bring people together when they couldn't actually get together? And that seemed like a really useful method of trying to bring together community. And then in Hardwick, the folks at Vermont Vaudeville and Modern Times Theater have just been like, I mean, honestly, in terms of bringing people together, they're winning. You know, they're putting on these free shows at the Highland Center for Arts every Friday for the month of June, which has been like street artists, you know, so folks are juggling and you know, just doing all sorts of crazy acrobatic things, and it's just like, and it's totally free. And so families can bring their kids to that, and that's been a huge community space, community building, I'd say. And then the folks at Modern Times Theater have built like a community dinner space in East Hardwick at the Grange, and that also has brought 70, 80 people from all walks of life in Hardwick, folks that might have a higher need of food insecurity, and folks that are totally fine. And there was just this common ground of just let's eat. So anyway, those are some that I've seen out there that I've just been really inspired by as well.
Well, and Emily, really quick, just slipping in a question here. Do you do any cross promotion, like in past years at the block party? Anything that like lets people know, like, hey, like, do you have fun tonight? Like, there's these other things going on too. Or I'm just wondering about sort of like the integration with the broader sort of community convening landscape.
Yeah, we haven't yet. I mean, I'd say there's so much room for that. At this point, it was just kind of like the singular event that we were working on, but we are trying to broaden. I'm on the rec committee there, and we're trying to really, you know, kind of create the space where maybe all things are kind of happening under that window, so that there's just a little bit, there's better communication throughout the community.
Appreciate you mentioning that Hardwick community dinner. I just shared in the chat there, Rumble Strip, Erica Heilman did a great podcast about that dinner. That's definitely worth a listen for anyone interested. Thanks, Emily.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So our next presenter is Russ Bennett, who is going to share the story of Camp Meade. And I live just down the road in Montpelier, and I have to say, it has been pretty awesome to see the transformation. I mean,
the storage place in town just has a
sorry about that. So Camp Meade has a pretty interesting history. Like, I always remember going past it and seeing these crazy old military vehicles parked out there, and now it's been transformed into just a really neat space that's just drawing people for all sorts of things. I mean, we had a soccer game in Waitsfield a couple of weeks ago, and then coming back through Middlesex, it was the perfect place to stop. And all of these teammates were there, and there's this wonderful outdoor eating space. You get some great food, and then you just can hang out. It's a really great hangout space. And then this morning, I heard a story on VPR about a veterans town hall that was also hosted at that space there at Camp Meade. And it just gives a picture of just how flexible and useful that having a nice community space like that is. So Russ, I wonder if you can share a little bit about Camp Meade and how it's come about and how it's going.
Well, I'm just going to make it all up. I think there's three of us that are the owners of what we call Camp Meade, and we call ourselves Planetary Matters. That's our LLC. And we own what you think of as Camp Meade and a property on each side and one across the street. And we're three old guys. So, we're not as excitable as we once were, but we're passionate about sort of building community and building the tools of community. And Alan is as well. And so it's myself, Alan Newman, and Mike Pelcher, who's a Middlesex resident. So there's three of us, which means that all decisions are unanimous. Because if it's 2-1, it's unanimous when it comes to that kind of a thing. So a little bit about the history of Camp Meade, as we know it. So in the modern era, Thomas Meade was a Brit who walked his way up to Middlesex and had the founding charter. So that's where the Meade name comes from for the town and the size of the town. In 1930, there was a CCC camp out what you call out back, where the green is. And that was the original New Deal. And those were all people who were working to build the dams, Wrightsville dams, rebuild highways, all that kind of stuff. And they had to send a certain amount of money home every week to their families. So the soil is imbued with that kind of civic participation and duty. Middlesex is on the Winooski River, and the flood of 27 once again wiped out a number of the mills, et cetera, that were there. So the property next to us, which is across from the old train station, was built by the postmaster at the time. And it's on higher ground. So he made it into a general store and they lived upstairs. So we have that building as part of what we're doing there as well. And we've got some old historical photographs of the architecture, and we sort of slowly making that be it's a live work place now for the person who has a little store called Diego's Oddities. But anyway, I'm a past board member, executive board member of VBSR, Vermont Businesses for Social Responsibility. So that gives you a sense of what my values might be. Livable wages, all that kind of that. and the rest of the planets. So one of the things that we want to do with our efforts is to create the tools that create community and bring people together, just like Emily was talking about. You have to do the work to bring people together. So we have we started off having little events out back, having some music free to the public, because we don't want to make money, access to art be have a monetary barrier in front of it. So we started doing those things. We started revitalizing the buildings. We own what was the old gas station across the way, and that just opened this winter as a little pub restaurant, which is, the people of Middlesex have been very clear that they would like to have someplace open after 6, so that they can meet and hang out, pre-COVID. So we've been working towards those things. Other things that we're doing is we're working with the town to create a river walk and some overlooks. People don't really realize that there's a gorge that's back there behind these properties, and we've sort of kept it a secret because it's like a 50-foot drop, and we want to, before we open that up to the public, we want to make it safe for the public to walk there. But that's you sort of you making the tools and the opportunity for people to just, like you were talking about, go for a walk along the river, with your kids or whichever, and that plant that seed so that long term, it'll be a 20, 30, 50 year process of making the river walk be longer than the amount of property that we actually own. But we can sort of start it, and then people can see the value of that. Things that we've done. So this is one of the ways that we are doing economic development that matches who we are, is by having events and by inviting people of all kinds to commune in the very Vermont way. I use the town meeting as one of the most important instruments that we have, not just in Vermont, but in the country, because we get together, we argue about stuff. We go to lunch, we come back, we argue some more. And we go, and if somebody runs off the road, even if they voted against you, we pull them out. We might threaten not to, but we will pull them out. And that's a very Vermont way of being. And it's something that the country is so far afield from, that because people don't just get together and realize that we all have far more in common with each other than we do in separation. I've worked on huge music festivals, the biggest festivals in the country. And you can be listening to your favorite artist and standing right next to somebody that is to the right of Attila the Hun, but you're still getting something, and you have more in common. So that's just a little bit, again, a way of explaining the tools. So shortly after we bought the property, and when we bought the property, nobody was allowed out back where the green is. The previous owners didn't want to, there'll be trash, garbage, all this kind of stuff. I mean, they're friends of mine. I don't mean anything bad, but they had a different perspective. So we thought we'll start bringing people together. And then somebody said, well, hey, can I do a winter solstice event there, a fire kind of a thing? And we thought, yeah, sure, but let's not make it be hitched exactly to any particular thing. It's going to be between Christmas and New Year's. So let's say we'll make the world's largest s'more, and we'll have some fire people there. So 4 years ago, we made what was at the moment the world's largest s'more, but we did it at the last minute, and people said, oh, you should go for the Guinness World Book of Records. So we said, okay, we'll do it again. So we made a bigger one the following year, and we followed all the rules and all, which are extensive, believe it or not. And Middlesex is now the proud, owner of the world's largest approved Guinness World Book of Records s'more. One of the things that had to happen, and we made it all, we had the ability to make it all there because Red Hen has a huge oven. So we made giant trays that they could make a giant one-piece cracker for the top and one for the bottom. And Nutty Steps was there. They had the chocolate, and we had organic, believe it or not, marshmallows made, and had a big ceremony. And we had 1,000 people the first time. We probably had 800 people the second time. And you have to also demonstrate that the thing gets eaten in its entirety. So we did that as well. But those are fun ways to bring people together, and it binds them in ways that are lasting. Back to, talking about the block party. So we're doing a block party in some way almost every weekend. This summer we have an artist in residence every Wednesday named Brett Hughes, who's a well-known guitar player, bluegrass guy. And then we have Fridays and Sundays, we generally have music, and it's free to the public. And so people come, and now that walls are back down a little bit, it's families. We do it from 4 or 5 to 8 or so, and it's become more and more and more a bonding place, just like you sort of experienced when you were there. And in the day we have Zumba and Tai Chi and all kinds of things like that, because people discovered through COVID that, well, these exercise programs are actually more fun outside. And through COVID, when COVID first happened, we said, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to invite anybody to come here and get sick. And then Red Hen did a sort of takeout pizza thing in the oven. Oh, we had a bread festival as well. We built a giant oven for that, wood oven. And we watched carefully how people behaved, and we put a fence around the green space last year. We put sort of security at each entrance, made sure that everybody that came in wore a mask. We didn't allow more than 100 to 150 people. We had the tables set so that people couldn't get close to each other, and nobody got sick. We contact traced everybody every time. What we saw was that people really were desperate to be together. And from a musician's standpoint, a lot of them had no place to practice. They couldn't play to an audience because there was no place to do it. So we were able to do sort of a modified, really carefully managed throughout the summer last year. And literally for at least the first half of the summer, everyone would start with people crying because the artists were desperate to be themselves, and the people really responded to it as well. So these are the things that sort of bring community back together, and we're doing it because we're passionate about it. But I think as a larger community, we need to invest in ourselves and in doing the tools that need to happen. And we need to understand why we've lost our way from getting together. And Middlesex is a perfect example of that. Route 2 before the interstate was the interstate. And it was a roadside motel and all that kind of jazz, and it was very successful. Like many towns. There's a train station that was there. It's still there, it's decrepit. And the train would stop and passengers would get on and get off, and commerce would stop and unload and it would get back on. The rivers, the confluence of the Mad River and the Winooski are there. So there's all of the pieces to support an economy and the way people can congregate. So what we're doing is trying to buck that trend a little bit and put the pieces in place that draw people together by having different events and by supporting those kinds of things. The interstate has 25,000 cars a day go by, but mostly they just go by. So we're trying to attract them a little bit because they go to the Mad River Valley, and we're attracting all of our friends and neighbors from Middlesex and the Valley and Montpelier and Waterbury to come and enjoy the place. At some point, all of it will economically make sense, but it's how we're investing in our community and in our state, because we think if we can keep doing this kind of economic development, like Red Hen's a perfect example. They have almost 60 employees. They pay a livable wage. The stuff is organic. The farthest ingredients come from is 120. Some of it comes from Quebec, but they have wheat that's grown here. So it's about really being conscious about how do we get driven apart and how can we bring ourselves back together again. And then I'll just finish up with that. Yeah, the reason that we said, we want to support the Vets Town Hall is because we want to have all kinds of things happen there and people to feel comfortable expressing their views, whatever they might be, in a respectful way. Veterans have, they put their lives on the line and we don't treat them well. And most of the population doesn't really realize what a psychic burden it is that you have to carry for the rest of your life to have participated in a war. So making those kinds of things available too, along with all the other fun and stuff that we're doing, is what we're doing. So I know I got a little bit heavy there, but it's all about having fun.
Thanks, Russ. And I see a couple of questions. I see a hand up and a couple of and a question in the chat. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold those and then give Maria from Wallingford a chance to talk about Wallingford Day, and then we'll just kind of open it up. I'll toss some of those questions out, and we'll open it up for an open forum. Let me just say this about Wallingford. We had the privilege as an organization to be invited to Wallingford to host a community visit. And I remember Jenna Koloski, my coworker, coming back from Wallingford and saying, boy, this thing called Wallingford Day really has importance to the community. And I think it had faded away and is now back. And Maria's going to sort of share that story of resurrection and the importance of Wallingford Day to the community. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Maria.
Okay, thanks, John. And thanks. It was really interesting hearing about the other, they're not both events, but other stories of community engagement in other places, because I got some ideas. I took some notes already. So yes, I'm one of the organizers of Wallingford Day. It came out of that community visit from VCRD. One of the groups that was formed as a result of that was one that wanted to focus on communication, events, and engagement. And pretty quickly that group started focusing in on Resurrecting Wallingford Day, which had been this beloved local event that hadn't happened in 11 years at least by then. And that was a few years ago. So, and it had been Wallingford Days. It had been over a period of time. There had been parade. There had been a lot of costumes and just a lot of town involvement from every club and group. And even in the past, there were huge shows on the lake that were historical. It was enormous. And I'm new here. At that point, I'd only lived here for a few years. I've been here 5 years now. And here I was trying to start up this thing that was so beloved, but I was so new and I didn't want to step on toes, but I felt like we needed something new. And a lot of people were like, well, if we just want to do it, it'll happen. As one group of people. And another group of people were like, well, you're pretty ambitious. I'll get behind it once I see some action. So I, at another VCRD event, actually, I ran into the people who do Chittenden Day, and they invited us over. So I went over with the town manager and met with the organizers of Chittenden Day. And that was huge to be able to pick their brains about what it took to put that on, and how to fundraise for it. And so that was 2019 was our first, and really, to be honest, only true Wallingford Day that we've had, because 2020 was 2020. But how that went was we stayed in close contact with the town hall, with the manager and with the clerk, and they were amazing. That was a really strong team. And we had a core group of people that had gotten together post VCRD visit, and we focused on having little events through the year to kind of raise our credibility with the town and to get people together. And it was interesting how that actually led to more, like the town administrator, she got very, she started a whole concert series really on her own. But so the momentum of having events and thinking about events and doing events created more events within the town, and that was exciting. And then finally, we did manage to put on a Wallingford Day, which was a full day event. There were tag sales in the morning. There were vendors down at the rec field. There was music in the evening, and then we had fireworks. And the fireworks were like, oh, and we had a barbecue. And the barbecue and the fireworks were the things that connected it to the previous Wallingford Day. And that was really important to have both of those. And we got donations from people in town. We also, communications part of that group, worked on resurrecting the newsletter and making sure that it got mailed to everybody in town, because we have, like a lot of Vermont, we have an aging population, not necessarily all online. So how else to communicate with people? Some people are just going to get it and throw it in their wood stove or ignore it, but a lot of people, that's an important connection to town and to events and to what's going on. So the newsletter was really important too. It's still new. So it's really interesting to hear about these more established institutions, town institutions. And I appreciate hearing about those, because it gives me hope that we can turn this into something that's more stable over the long term. Last summer, we didn't have it, but we did have a palette to celebrate Wallingford Day, as if it was, we had this palette decoration kind of contest, but more just display on all the roads in town. People painted palettes and put them out in front of their houses. And we got a lot of good feedback about that. People who drive through, who don't even live here, but who see it on their way by. We're bringing that back this year. We are also bringing back Wallingford Day a little bit. We're having more music, free music, and we're having fireworks. And maybe some food trucks. We're still working on that. And that's going to be on July 17th this year. So fingers crossed the select board says we can have fireworks. They said we could once, and now they want to have to say it. They want to be able to say it again. So we're gonna go back and ask them again. But it's been an interesting ride. And it also, another thing, after the first one, once we got to like within a week of the first Wallingford Day, there were some people who were like, who had been like all the way through, had been like, what about this? Well, what about this? And kind of reluctant to actually step in and be helpful. And then they realized it was really on, and they have been solid supporters since then. Like, I think it was good that we proved ourselves that first year. And now we have people who are continuing to be part of it. But I think it would be helpful for us to get more businesses in town involved, and not just, hey, can you donate a thing, but like, what part of this can we give to you, so that they can take more ownership of it, and it can be attached to people who have more stake. I mean, I'm on the school board also, and I'm also a teacher, and I also in a different district, and I'm busy with a lot of things, and I honestly don't think I'm the most sustainable person to have organizing this thing. So it's also a matter right now of trying to figure out how to bring it back into kind of institutionhood as opposed to just a thing that these few people put on. So I'm here as much to learn from other people who are doing events and organizing their communities as I am bringing the story of our day, because it's still pretty fresh in Wallingford.
Thanks, Maria.
Sure.
I think you right at the tail end there raised such a an important component, which is like, how do you sort of build the team and spread the load such that you ensure that each year there's a sort of a task list and stuff that has to get done. And like, if that all falls to one or two people, I imagine it's a sustainability question of like, how do you?
Well, this year I've learned finally when someone's like, how about this? I say, great, it's yours. So.
Yeah. Great. You know, I see Becca had a question when Russ was talking. Well, let me just sort of, first of all, huge thank you to Emily, to Russ, to Maria for like saying yes when we invite you to this funny thing called a Community Leadership Network workshop. I know they can feel a little awkward, but like really appreciate your willingness to share from your experience and the great things that you are doing. I really want to open it up at this point. Some Q&A for our presenters is great, but also some sharing for folks. I think some of you are organizing other events and it would be awesome to hear about those. Let me just get to a couple of questions though as we get started. You know, Becca had a question for you, Russ, around like how do you work with the municipality? What does that sort of relationship look like? You're clearly a private entity, but how do you partner with the municipality?
Well, you do exactly that. You want to be a good partner. That's how I think about it. I've been on a lot of boards. I was the chair of the Whitfield Planning Commission for years, and you know, on the 3-town district representative for planning, all those kinds of things. So I know both sides of it. And what our approach is, we really want to be, we don't think of ourselves as developers. We think of ourselves as, you know, living our values, but we really want to be who you would hope you would come to your town, not somebody that wants to do something at your expense and wants to sort of argue about the regulations or whatever that is. So, you know, we've looked at there's many tools, you know, state and government, and local government, but we have gone before the select board, we the three of us, and before the planning commissions, and when we first bought the properties, and said, you know, we don't know exactly what we're doing, but you know, we want to do some good things, and we want to help to revitalize the town, and we don't really want to propose to do something that you don't want to have done. And at that time, they were also going through their town plan and writing a new town plan. In fact, one of the things that happened was we said, have you guys ever applied for a planning grant? You know, this, because there's money available for planning commissions and those kinds of things, planning grants. They said, no, we've never applied for one of those. And we sort of looked around, and we have a consultant we worked with, who I used to work with in the Mad River Planning District, and she was a planner for South Burlington. She lives in California now, but she's from Vermont, so she knows about grants that can be helpful for a town. She said, well, maybe a sort of pedestrian planning grant would be a good idea. So she and we helped them, and the planning commission applied for the grant. But it was turned down because their town plan had expired and they didn't have a town plan, which meant they didn't have an aspirational document. And I knew that that's one of the most dangerous things that can happen to a town, because if you don't have a town plan, you can't say no to anything. Participate a little bit as we could, you know, as private entities. We don't want to be seen as, you know, just coming in with some idea about what's good for the town, but learning what that is. So we work with the town to help them then get a successful planning grant to look at the Route 2 corridor, because one of the things we hear from the neighbors is everybody drives too fast through here. And it's true, and we need to have, ideally a long-term plan would come up with sidewalks and streetscape and, you know, all of that kind of stuff, the kind of things that slow people down, traffic calming, other than just having us have an event and have people park on both sides of the road, which does slow the traffic down. So we've been working with them in that kind of a way. And this river walk that I mentioned, we knew that there was a Better Places grant coming down that they might be able to apply for. And we said, well, maybe, we can support that application, and then we'll build some barriers that will be safe so that we can open it up to the public, and we will participate in actually creating where a walk can be. And so we've met with the Friends of the Winooski River, the Friends of the Mad River, all kinds of VNRC, different people who have an impact on what educational kinds of things can be said along a walk, aside from, if the water's polluted, you're like 90% water, then you're polluted. So let's, get a grip. So that's how we're working with the town, is by being totally forthright about what we don't know and what we're imagining before we want to do it. So, we apply for things just like anybody does, and try to keep a really clear, bright line between we are a private entity, and we don't want to be accused of being heavy-handed, or we want to be good neighbors, and so far I think we have been good neighbors. So I think it's all about intent and behavior.
Thanks, Russ. Some good lessons, not just about spaces and events, but about how to work with municipalities in general, embedded in that response. I see Emily.
You all people. They're just the same as we are.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants what's best for the town.
Definitely. Emily Rosenbaum, you've got a hand up.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Emily. Long time no see. My question is, we're in Lamoille, and Lamoille has a really is geographically very diverse. The towns are very diverse, and one of the questions I have is, how do you make it not so much about we're doing this thing for you and trying to pull in the Becca's nodding, so I'm obviously making some sense. How do we make, I want our community gatherings and our community events to be the community creating events for the community, and not so much have this person's putting on this concert for these people, and it's it's difficult in a community like ours, because our towns are very different, and our communities within the towns are very different. But we also have tremendous sense of loyalty to each other. And I would just love to hear more about, how do you make it not just a event for the community, but an event by the community? I got there, Becca. Are you proud of me?
Yeah, anybody who has a response to that. I see Emily's unmuted, and Alana too, and Gail. So
I'll let Gail go, and then I'll go.
Okay, thanks. Very quickly, we have an event that we have an organization in Harford called Harford Community Coalition. Was formed maybe 12 years ago, and along the way, those of us on the board said that we really need to do something for the whole community. Now, is talk about these little villages and things you have. Harford is made up of 5 villages, very distinct villages, largest one being White River. But there's Wilder and Queechee and West Hartford and Harford Village. So in order to have an event that would bring these very diverse communities together, we decided that we would do something very non-traditional. This is a very, as you probably know, very tourist and visitor-oriented area. And we have great events and they are support our economic community, of course, like the Balloon Festival and the Polar Express and so forth. But we did not have a quote unquote community event that was basically just sort of for our communities. So the committee came up with a plan called the Block Party. And this Block Party is totally free. And it's held on the park right behind the town hall in downtown White River. It was very, very easy for us to get the town administrators, the police department, the fire department, the rec department, everybody involved. We have some members of those folks that are on our board anyway and involved in the community. But what I wanted to say was what brought this together was the fact that we focused this whole block party on the wellness of Hartford. And so, and anybody could be a vendor, but they had to be a nonprofit. So we had, I can't even remember, the first year, I think we had 25 vendors. And the last year we did it, which was just before COVID, we had, I don't know, we were pushing 50 vendors. And these are all scattered all through the park. The park is out behind the town hall. It's also behind the Listen Center, which is right in the downtown. And they have community dinners. Well, we needed food, of course. So our Rotary Club, and there's 3 or 4 of us that are on the Harford Community Coalition. 3 or 4 of us in Rotary said, okay, we'll do the food. So we have been doing food. Again, it's all free. And the Rotarians and friends and family help do that. It is just an evening event. It starts about 4 in the afternoon. We're done usually by 8:30. There are vendors, there are musicians, and these are usually, again, local musicians. We also have, when we were having this coming up will be our 8th year because we skipped last year. We usually have it in June, just before school gets out. This year we're having it in September because we wanted to wait as long as we could to make sure that the restrictions were all taken away and everything. But it's just such a great thing. The fire department brings all of the fire trucks, and the police bring the police dog, and they set up everything for the kids to crawl all over or to visit and talk with the firemen. We also, because we set up our food behind the Listen Center, the community dinners are held every night, Monday through Saturday at the Listen Center. So everybody that's signing up for the Listen community dinners now can come and they get their food from Rotary. So it's just a combination of many things. We have a concrete wall that that is sort of in a little tunnel that you go from one part of the park to the other. And so there's somebody from the art department at the high school gets the kids all together and they do some type of art on the wall. But it's short, it's not very long, it's 3-4 hours. But the last time that we had it, which was, as I said, in a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we had about 900 people, and only visiting between those hours of 5 and 8. So it's pretty intense for quite a while. And the other big thing that's really nice to involve the community is that the police and fire chiefs scoop ice cream. So that always adds a nice touch to everything. But this is an event that is focused just on community members, and it does incorporate those 5 villages. So it's just growing and growing. And as I said, the vendors all have to be related to some type of nonprofit work that is focused just on wellness.
Thanks, Gail. That sounds like a great event. Alana, it seemed like you had something to add.
Yeah, I'd love to share that I offer something called park dancing, and similar to I can't remember who was talking about launching something in 2019 and then like having a pandemic in front of you. So I'm really excited to share that we had an inaugural, so I created this in a suburb of Philadelphia. I moved here 5 years ago, like Maria, and many things, I have a young child and many things prevent you from, doing everything you want to do. So here I am. Yes, Sunday, we had our inaugural, very first Vermont park dancing, and I'm going to share, it was an intergenerational event, and it was just so hot out, but there we are on the green in Waterbury Center, and here's another one. And so we co-created a dance. So I'm a facilitator, and my mission is to gather people and make meaning. And I think that that is maybe kind of like what Emily, you were talking about, like, how do we invite community to come together and make meaning? And I will share that I just tallied while you all were talking. We had 35 name tags used. There were many more people there. So on like one of the hottest Vermont days, we had a great turnout. We did have an ice cream cart show up, the Udder guys in Waterbury. So that was like a high, sort of gift, especially to the kids. They're like, when can we get ice cream? And I'm like, right after we're done with the dance. So we did the model is low commitment. So you show up, make a dance, and then perform it. So the idea is that it's doable, it's co-created, and after that, people walk away and they know they made something. And so then when they see each other, I mean, I could talk for days about this, but it ripples out. It ripples out. When you move together, it's like, it's amazing. So it really builds community, it builds trust. You have a dialogue in a different way other than words. This is like, I'm super excited. I'm so excited to finally share this here with you guys, because I've been attending these since the 2019 summit, actually, which was when I was like ready to go. But I wanted to share one more thing. There's a book that I just read, and it really speaks to these ideas. It's called The Art of Gathering. It's by Priya Parker, and I can't recommend it enough. She calls a gathering 3 or more people, and it really, it really is just, it's so important no matter how you're gathering, or where, how many people. It could be a picnic. And especially now as we come back together, even if you're getting together with family, or you're meeting up with another set of parents and their kids at the park, just to go into it with more of an intention rather than let's just meet up. And you can kind of take or leave some of the things that she talks about. She talks about weddings. She talks about dinner en blanc. If you've heard of that, I don't know. Let me just type that. This is another beautiful event. She talks a lot about this in one of her chapters, and that it's an event that it doesn't, you don't have to pay, I think, or something like that. So it brings like a lot of diverse people to, it's often done in large cities. So you can look at that website. I just put it in the chat. But that's a special thing to just know about, and again, it's how we gather. What are the guidelines? And so can the guidelines create access points so that there's like some kind of intrigue that brings people in versus a traditional concert venue kind of idea? So yeah, again, I could talk about this all day, but on the heels of our first park dancing event, I'm super excited. The next one is August 8th, Waterbury Center. This little green, it has a gazebo. It's absolutely adorable. And I'm mobile. I can go anywhere. I just got contacted by Canaan, Vermont for park dancing. So yeah, happy and excited to talk to you all. Thank you.
Thanks, Alana. Deborah Granquist typed a question in the chat that I feel like weaves into this a little bit, which is she describes in Weston. Deborah, maybe you want to articulate it actually for folks. Just you have sort of sub events for smaller parts of the community, but it doesn't feel like you have a Weston wide event, it sounds like.
Right. So I'm really impressed and love to hear all these stories of all the good things that are going on in communities. And I guess what I'm grappling with, and I guess it's not that there's a right or a wrong answer, but we have a lot of stuff going on in Weston. First of all, we're a community of 500 people, so there's not a lot of people to do a lot of different things. But anyway, you know, there is stuff going on, but it seems that it's all kind of geared to, you know, one group does something and then the people from that group come to it and another group does something. And there just hasn't been a, you know, town-wide event in quite a while. And yet now when I think back to some of the times when we've done town-wide events and there've been parades and everything, and people are lining the streets, you know, and everybody's there. I guess, I don't know, I just was sort of looking for, is that the gold standard? Or should we be happy with our little group things? I don't know. I just love the notion of bringing different parts of the community together instead of it always having be the parents go to this, the old timers go to that, the music lovers go to this. I don't know. Just food for thought there.
Maria, looks like you've got a response.
Yeah, I mean, that was a challenge for us too. Like, we have a Memorial Day parade here where the band comes and then it goes to the cemetery and there's speeches and things. And that's the one parade we have, and we haven't had it since before COVID, but that was the one thing that brought everyone together. And Wallingford Day used to have a parade, but like, can we sustain 2 parades in a summer? Because there's so much pulling people apart right now, like we've all been saying. And I mean, screens being a huge thing. Like, people are like, well, if people want to recreate, they can just do it themselves. And there's this big thing of like, why should we support organizing events or recreation when if people want to do it, they can just do it. And it's about convincing people that it's worth putting in the effort to really bring people together. But with Wallingford Day, the way we kind of strategized was trying to encourage people. Yes, the small groups, put on your events, bring people out, because the more people out, the more people will be out. And then we will have a culminating thing, and just keep making sure there's a presence. And I think for us, we have kind of a wide range of people who are involved in Wallingford Day. So it's not just the people who want the music or just the people. I just think involving as wide a range of people in the planning, and that's where the engagement part comes in, and really thinking about, is this something that's going to be interesting to everybody? Like, if we're only having classical music playing, people aren't going to want to come. Like, it's just not the way. It won't bring in the whole community. So how to make it appealing to everybody and how to involve everybody in the planning and really listen. I think that's my 5 years in Wallingford is learning how to listen to people.
Emily.
Yeah, I love that you asked that, Deborah. I just recently stopped being the lay leader of a house of worship. And one of the fascinating things about houses of worship is it's where different parts of the community that don't usually cross each other's paths come together, especially for us, because we're the only synagogue for an hour around. And so, well, I guess my Montpelier is 45 minutes, but it ended up pulling together people who otherwise are in other sort of satellite groups. And it's interesting because then you start seeing those groups having some cross-pollination as well. And one of the things I've had to be satisfied with is that it's not that we're going to get everybody together all at the same time, but the Venn diagram of community and I've found it specifically interesting with houses of worship. The other thing that I found really interesting is the way libraries help to create that Venn diagram too. Especially through the pandemic, I found the libraries to be really interesting that way. And then I watched the different houses of worship do things together. And so it's been, much as I would love a giant community-wide everything, one of the things that has been very interesting to watch is the way that the cross-generational relationships that come out of houses of worship, and the way they cross town lines and cross socioeconomics, which you don't see as much in other areas of the community.
Thanks, Emily. You know, we've cruised, usually as we hit the 1 hour point, I say to folks, those of you who have to go, because we know that not everyone has time to give or wants to stick around. So I should have said it at 11, we're at 11:10 now. And at this point, happy just to have the conversation keep going as other people have things to add for another 15 or 20 minutes here. So I just want to give folks permission. I think Emily just left us from Craftsbury, and yeah, Russ and Maria, I just don't want you to feel like you have to be with us, but really want to give people. Yeah, go for it.
And then I'll leave. You can't, it's that old thing, you can't please all the people all the time, So part of what we've been trying to do is we have a variety of things that, and now people come to us because they see that it's a place, it's sort of like a privately owned park, and it behaves like that. So the Vets Town Hall or Bread and Puppet or the Harwood Union was not able to do its musical in the Harwood Union Auditorium, so they came to Camp Meade to do it. We've had a variety of different kinds of things. There's African drumming there. There's, like I said, Tai Chi. There's a swing band that we gave them a tent that they could rehearse in, because the place that they rehearse in is like wicked hot. And one of the most successful things that we did was somebody early on gave me a small little sort of swing set and a little cabin and a slide and all that kind of stuff. And so we put it up, and it was like a magnet. More moms and dads, but kids and caregivers. During the school year, you can't really go to the school playgrounds because school's in session. So we saw right away there was a need for this kind of thing, and every kind of mom and every kind of kid shows up. So it's a little bit about having those little bit kinds of tools, and now we have people that want to come and do things there. So I think it was Emily Rosenblum was talking about diversity, where we're having conversations with the diverse community that we serve. We know we're the largest state in the nation, but Burlington and all of those areas, they come down, and there's a very diverse community there. I did redesigned the thing for the Echo Museum a number of years ago, and for children from 0 to 5. And there's 25 languages in the school system in Burlington area. So it's just about humans have the same common needs and providing a space. And what's brought back to me is that all these towns historically had their own band. They all have a little green, they all had a park, they all had a place where people gathered for a variety of different reasons. And that's one of the tools that we need to work on and strengthen, where towns sometimes maybe that park or green is not used so well anymore, or somebody needs to have a vested interest. And so that's what we're trying to do, because nobody lives forever, and we want to create enough energy that, just like somebody said, that there are people who are the beneficiaries of doing it have enough desire to keep the thing alive, because otherwise the volunteer thing goes like that, and there's burnout, and then it comes back, and that's fine. But it's really about getting people have enough vested interest in their particular thing, whatever it is, and provide enough variety of opportunity that nobody feels like they're locked out, and that's just this place or that place or that politic place. So that's sort of what I got, and everybody go forth and bring us all together.
Thanks, Russ.
Thanks.
Really appreciate you joining us, and really appreciate Camp Meade. I have to say, it's just awesome. It's such a great place. So
we're trying, bit by bit.
Thanks so much. Others, Emily, you just raised I think a good point and a good question, which is sometimes a beer is part of what draws people. At the same time, frankly, it's not always the healthiest choice, and for some that probably excludes them, that it's that kind of a space. So I don't know, do folks have thoughts about how to manage that, or how to address that?
I come from the Philly and the Brooklyn area, urban spaces, and I'll just say where there are climbing playground apparatuses almost on every corner. So Russ just plopping that thing down is a total game changer to a space, right? Because we need a place to bring these people that want to climb all day. And anyway, but I'll speak to the substance use aspect, gosh, my brain. But yeah, those events, I also in Vermont, I wonder about who's driving home on those events, like, because I'm from an urban space where people just hop on a subway or whatever. But here, I'm like, okay, because it's like IPAs, their alcohol content here are particularly high. And I'm just like looking at events that I've been at, and I'm like, who's driving?
Yeah.
And I it's not up to us to solve for having a designated person, but it is something to think about with how we gather, right? And
Definitely.
also making people feel safe to express themselves in a space, to share an experience in the space, so that everybody's sort of in the same frame of mind. Because when you have and also sometimes those spaces are cordoned off, like the beer garden, and that's kind of tricky too, because it's like, oh, I don't belong over there, or, well, I guess I'll go,
Yeah, at the Mountaineers game, that's in fact what it was. Across the field, behind the left field, there's this little pendant area, and that's
so weird.
That's the beer garden. And in a way, it was nice. Like some parents, I think, had a nice little escape over to the beer garden.
Yeah.
It was nice to be a little removed, but it felt different than just sitting in the stands and having your beer. Where you're part of it. So Gail, it seems like you have something to add.
I was just going to say, the Hot Air Balloon Festival, which is now over 40 years old, it took probably maybe more than that, 30 years for the committee to finally decide to allow a beer garden, because it was always from day one focused on a family event, and we had kids activities and all of that, and it was. But by the time they decided to have the beer garden, I was not on the board at that time, but it has worked out. I mean, we have over the course of the weekend, 15 to 20,000 people.
Wow.
And that come through a town, and so many of them come from out of the area. So it's not people that we really know, needless to say, on a personal basis, but it's well done. It's the beer garden, the one we have, is actually managed and operated by a local business, and the gentleman that does it, everybody in town knows him, and I think what he buys into the fact that this has to be kept. Everybody has to behave themselves. He always has somebody right there at the beer garden that really watches to make sure everybody behaves themselves, and we take a look at any events that we do as to how they're focused, because our Polar Express, of course, does not allow any alcohol. And we have a couple of other smaller events that they don't allow alcohol. The other thing is in Harford, as it probably is in most municipal parks, you cannot have alcohol anyway if you're doing it in a town park. And it's the same thing with state, if we do it on state property, like the Balloon Festival is, the Polar Express is held at the railroad station, Amtrak station in White River, and that is owned. Now it's owned by the Agency of Transportation. So I think you have to weigh what the basis of the event is and what you're doing the event for and what your audience is.
Yeah.
And we haven't really had, experience with the Balloon Festival, the best of my knowledge, and I probably would hear if anybody misbehaved to the point of where we had to call in some authorities. So they've done a good job.
Nick.
I was just going to add a not terribly insightful comment. Gail kind of stole one of the things I was thinking about, which is like we have some successful events here in Corinth that happen in the town hall, which is a really nice, like, because there's just no question of having even like a BYOB situation. The other sort of medium and comment was just like, I think time of day is a really good indicator. We have some morning activities. There are probably a handful of people who want to start hitting those IPAs then, but probably not most people. And so it can kind of set this expectation. And then the last thing, just thinking about authority figures, we have a robust fire department in town and kind of an anemic fast squad for a number of years that we're really struggling to, no pun intended, Becca got that, but who are really sort of struggling to maintain membership. And we're always both all of our first responders are sort of perpetually in this exposure crisis, right? Because the majority of the work that they do happens at 3 a.m. when a power line is down across the road. So they have been looking to drum up membership. And what we did at a Northeast Slopes Fest a number of years back was they set up like it was a dual purpose first aid station / recruitment tent. And it was right next to the kegs. So, and it was just sort of interesting. I was across the way making pizzas, and it was interesting to see the dynamic that even just having somebody in like first responder attire stationed close by. I think this is all like non-scientific, but I think it helped kind of set a like more supervised vibe, I guess. And it seemed like it sort of created a safer space. And then of course there's the actual practicality of somebody being on hand in case anybody needed medical assistance. So those are my three little 2 cents.
Thanks, Nick. Laurel.
Well, I just wanted to hear why Emily put the question up.
Yeah, so I'm actually not in recovery. I don't have a substance use disorder, but I do find that our community building is actually essential. Being part of a community is essential to recovery. And, I will tell you that through our incident command, when there was this sort of great event for recovery friendly houses of worship, I put it out to all our houses of worship. I told them this, the White House was running this. I went to it. I provided them all the notes. And it was like crickets. And I think part of it is that there is this feeling of like the people in recovery are over there, but like they're like a huge part of our community. And it's essential to recovery to be part of the economy, to be part of your community, to be fully welcomed in our public spaces and our public life. And so it's just something I've been thinking a lot about because one of the things someone I work with says a lot is like, if people in recovery are being served, the whole community is being served. And so that I just, I struggle because I do feel like there's this sort of feeling like, well, if you're in recovery, you can go sit over there. And I don't know that that's necessarily community building.
Well, and honestly, I think this issue may become more acute and intense with the legalization of marijuana, right? Like,
Yeah.
And like you imagine, just that's already an issue, and I imagine it's going to become more of one, right? Like, it's one thing to be drinking from a cup. It's one thing to sort of have that, the smoke and other issues around that too. So like this, I think we may be on a path where we have to dive a little more deeply into some of these questions in the next year or two as we go through this transition.
Can I say one thing about that? I totally hear that even as like, I'm just not a big drinker, I mean, I'm not going to really go into that, but I hear what you're saying, and it almost feels like you could do, John, a think tank of some sort, like how do we tackle that those discrete divides in groups in community, like because I do think it's an issue. It's an issue with the beer garden being shaped over there. I just think you could really unpack it and like think innovatively about how to gather and how, because I see in our community here, I see a great there's a great recovery group around Green Mountain Fitness Club, where they're exercising together. They're like, that's their way to feel empowered and connected and sober and stay sober. I've heard Tanya, I think it is. Does maybe you guys know her? She spoke at the summit actually in 2019. She did a whole thing about recovery and her exercise programming around that. So I do think that's an opportunity, you know, to look at. Thanks for bringing that up, Emily.
Yeah, I appreciate the suggestion. You know, I see we've just got a couple of minutes left. I don't know if others have anything they want to bring to the conversation as we get ready to wrap up here. You know, just want to acknowledge Nick really put the work in to organize today's workshop. So real thanks to Nick for that, and real thanks to you all. I mean, what's powerful about these conversations is that people tend to bring their voice, and it's really participatory, and that makes for a much, I think, a richer gathering, let's say. So I think we're all doing this work. You know, I think I grew up in Brattleboro, and I think about the winter carnival we had every year that was probably organized by the rec department, but it took a lot of hands to make that happen. And like the memories that are embedded for me of winter carnival, or we had this Guilford Fair, teeny Guilford, Vermont, at the end of the summer hosted the Guilford Fair. And man, those memories I've got from like being that kid running around that place, just like that Guilford Fair day, like and it marked the end of summer. So it was like a poignant moment because you knew you were going back to school, but it was like that last hurrah for the whole of like Southern Windham County. And just, it takes work, it takes effort. And in fact, the Guilford Fair is one of those things that has a tenuous existence and has sort of winnowed. And so you all are doing that work, and I think we all benefit from that. And it's really a case where it's all of these, all of us coming together to bring other people together. It's really, it's what makes our communities what they are. So thank you all. Really appreciate all that you do, and really appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks for being on, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for this. This was great, guys.
Thank you.